Welcome to this edition of Cup Chat with Birding with Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service. Today, join us as special guest Terry Hibbets talks about herps in our Beyond Birds episode.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this morning on Cup Chat. I'm Dr. Maureen Frank, and joining us today is Terry Hibbets. If you've been on before, you've seen him on here before. Emily is not with us today because she has to go do some livestock validations. So it's a little bit crazy in the 4-H world right now. But today we are talking about herps. And so I think if people don't already know what that term is, Terry, your t-shirt might give them a clue. But can you talk about what we're talking about today?
Well, herps are reptiles and amphibians, and herp is short for herpetology. And the study of herpetology deals with reptiles and amphibians. Why they're together is anyone's guess, but it's been tradition that they always study together, even though reptiles are probably closer to birds than they are to amphibians, and amphibians are probably closer to fish than they are to reptiles. But that's the way it is. We study them together. It's been that way ever since I've known about it anyway. But
so let's dive into that a little bit. And you've got way more experience with this than I do, because I always say, let's go back to high school biology. And you were, in fact, a high school biology teacher. But let's break down for everybody. You know, I'm going to ask everybody to remember right now: kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. When we're talking about reptiles and amphibians, we're talking about two different classes of animals. So like you said, reptiles are really more similar to birds, amphibians probably more similar to fish. But sometimes people see a frog, and frogs and snakes and lizards and salamanders, they kind of all lump them together in their brain. So will you talk about why they're so different? Why are they in completely different classes?
Well, when you look at amphibians, you got three groups of amphibians. You got salamanders. I'm going to keep everything real simple. Salamanders, you got frogs, and then you got this weird group of animals down in the tropics called caecilians. Well, the salamanders and frogs have certain characteristics, and the characteristics that they do have enables them to be classified as amphibians, and they have clawless toes. Reptiles have claws on their toes if they got legs and toes. They're thin, moist, scaly skins. Thin, moist, scaly skins, and they are ectotherms, which means that they rely on their surroundings for their body temperature. When they lose, or if they lose a part, leg, joint, tail, they can regenerate it. In most cases, there are some places and parts that they might not be able to regenerate, but most can be regenerated. They have glands that are toxic and have chemical secretions. Reptiles don't have that. Then these aid in their defense. And their respiration, they have basically three types of respiration. They can have air sacs, which will be kind of like lungs. They can have, they can breathe through their skin, cutaneous respiration, and some can breathe through the mucus linings in their mouth and their cloaca. So that makes a kind of a unique group of amphibians. And of course, the amphibian part itself means double life, living part of their life in the water, part of the life on land. So those are basically the characteristics of the amphibians. The reptiles, though, are just, they're just they're completely different. They have amniote eggs. Everybody knows what an amniote egg is. Well, think of a chicken egg, and all the parts of a chicken egg. Reptiles have those. Even those that give live birth will have amniote egg, except for there's a couple exceptions like garter snakes, but most, even the water snakes, have the egg inside of them, develop inside, and it just actually opens up inside and they give live birth. But still, they basically have an amniote egg. They have epidermal scales, which amphibians didn't have any scales at all. Legs usually have 5 digits. There's some exceptions to that. Some don't even have digits at all, but like snakes. But they have true claws at the end of each digit, but they're also ectotherms. Now that may be one of the reasons they study them together, because both groups are ectotherms. Of course, fish are too, but their respiration is almost strictly lungs. They may not be really well developed lungs. They're more like big air sacs, but they are true lungs. And some snakes only have one big elongated lung, and some snakes have 2 well-developed lungs. Pythons, for example, have 2 well-developed lungs, whereas most regular common snakes that we look at, rattlesnake or whatever, has one extended long lung and one vestigial or small lung. So it's not, not real big. Respiration is, strictly through lungs. There is an exception with soft shell turtles. They can respire a little through their cloaca as well. It's one reason they can stay under the water so long. And they have copulatory organs. In other words, they have internal fertilization, whereas amphibians do not have internal fertilization, except with one exception. But there is a true frog up in the Northwest that has a little, they call it the tail frog, and it's got a little vestigial structure hanging off of their back that can be inserted into a female, and the sperm slides down the edge of it, not through it. But anyway, but they do have real developed copulatory organs. And those are basically your distinguishing characteristics from the 2 groups. I don't know, got a question?
Yeah, and there's a lot of difference. And I think that's a great explanation, because there's usually, I run through this sometimes with little kids, and we go through, some of the very basic things, but we don't dive into a lot of what you just covered. One thing that I hadn't really stopped to think about before, I knew this, but I just hadn't really stopped to think about, is how much that difference of, when we think about snakes, being venomous, a lot of people, may be concerned with a venomous snake. And so we know that snakes have that capability. And we also know, for example, Gila monsters, so there's a lizard that's venomous. But with frogs and salamanders, you've got toxins still. It's just a different delivery system. They're not venomous, but they're in their bodies still. And so it's kind of fascinating, because we don't have toxic birds or toxic mammals. So that's another thing they have similar, but it's just different how they deliver that.
The platypus is got spurs that have a venom.
I forgot about platypus.
So that's kind of an exception, though.
That's true. That's true.
And what is it? There's a shrew. I can't remember.
Oh, I don't know about that.
I think one of those has some toxic in their teeth or something. But anyway.
But there aren't any venomous birds, right?
No, and not I think of. There may be some that may be poisonous that you eat could cause some problems, but other than that, no. Whereas amphibians, I would say basically every single one of them have some levels of toxicity or poison in their glands, in their skin.
See, and that's something else levels. I don't think I realized. I don't think I realized that there, I always, you wash your hands after you grab a frog or whatever, but I don't think I realized it was that really widespread. They all have a little bit somewhere in it.
Just different levels. Yes.
Yeah.
And then some have concentrated glands on their back, on the behind their head, and that where the poison is more concentrated in certain areas. Newts, for example, have warty structures along their backs, and those are contain highly venomous, or not venomous, but poisonous chemicals. But anyway, and some of them are quite dangerous. The newts in California, for example, some of those have been known to kill people. So now, what idiot would put one in his mouth? I don't know. But
I've wondered that. I'm thinking it may be like, that most venomous snake bites are young men and that are inebriated or something like that. I'm thinking the newt toxic delivery. Whoever puts a newt in their mouth. There may be some alcohol involved, maybe some poor decision making, maybe some showing off.
The guys that lick the cane toads in Australia, yeah, they've probably been, drinking a little bit, yeah.
Yeah. So that's interesting, and just so everybody knows, we, with our Beyond Bird segments, which is obviously what we're doing today, we're going a little bit beyond our normal bird topics. We are just trying to introduce some new things that are out there, some other parts of nature and wildlife. And so if everybody's interested in this, there's a lot to cover here. So I had told Terry, we're going to have to break this down later and go into like a cup chat just on snakes and one just on turtles. Because I think you've mentioned some things that are kind of interesting, hopefully sparking people's interest in future things like snakes having basically one lung, and just there's two, but one's vestigial. And just all those adaptations of having, this long, narrow animal. So I think just so everybody knows, we're keeping it broad today. But if you're interested in one of these or have questions for Terry, definitely comment. Because I don't have Emily here, I'm not good at watching the comments and running the Facebook Live, but definitely comment and we will get back to you or get your questions answered. So, so the other thing I realized.
Let's say if they'd leave questions,
Yeah. If you leave questions, Terry can answer them for you. The other thing I realized, Emily's always really good about keeping it light and interesting, and I kind of dive right into our topics. So I just have to say today I have my travel mug because it's that kind of day. There's lots of on the road. If you saw Emily's post, she and I are headed to the Texas Master Naturalist Conference tomorrow. Terry, do you by any chance have a snake mug to go with your snake shirt?
No, I do not have a snake mug.
I feel like I might have to remedy that for you.
I don't drink coffee and stuff, so I don't have mugs.
Do you have a snake cup that you put your Dr. Pepper in?
No, I just got a regular coffee cup with some water in it today.
I'm gonna have to find you a snake cup or a snake mug that you can put your water or your Dr. Pepper or whatever in. So
yeah, okay.
All right. So the next thing I want to talk about is we talk a lot, obviously Cup Chat is birds. We talk about birding and bird related topics, but you can also go herping. So, yes. and when we had you on before, we talked about butterflying and dragon flying. So I think everybody can probably guess what does it mean to go herping, but can you talk a little bit about, tools that you need, where you go herping, how it's similar to or different from birding, kind of things like that?
Well, the basic thing about herping is you're just going out looking and searching for reptiles and amphibians, and it depends on what you're looking for. If you're going out looking for venomous snakes, then it's very important that you have the proper tools, because it's not wise and advisable to handle venomous reptiles with your hands. And so there are tools like big, long forceps that can grip, kind of like those trash grippers that you can pick up trash with.
Hold that thought. There's some in my office.
But she's going to get one now to look at.
And we've got show and tell today. I don't know, my background makes this a little hard.
Yeah.
See, it's got the work it on this side. And here that open.
Yeah,
open and close.
Actually, all the years I've been doing this, I have never used one of those.
Oh, that's funny.
I use a what they call a snake stick that's just got a little bent rod.
Oh, just the hook. Yeah.
Yeah, just a hook. And I use that, and usually a venomous snake, you can pick a snake up with that and drop them in a bucket or a bag. And sometimes I won't even get into that, pinning them down. But venomous snakes, and it also depends on what species you're looking for. I know my son Troy will go out and spend nearly all night looking at in rock cuts and crevices along roadways. Now, the law says you got to wear fluorescent orange if you're going to do this, and you got to have a permit. So you just can't just go out on the road somewhere and stop the car and start walking without the first off getting the permit and the blaze orange. But night hunting like that, we used to years ago, we was right up and down the roads at night. But now the state has said that's not right. You can't do that. You have to drive into a certain location, pull off, and then walk up and down the roadways or road cuts, as long as you got that proper permit and you wear fluorescent orange or something that drivers will see you. But then there are other animals that you go out and chase during the daytime. Of course, turtles are a different story. There are special turtle traps. There are basking turtles that get out and set on logs and so forth. So sometimes you can even snorkel for them. Lizards are they're more difficult in chasing because they're fast and quick. And we have a technique we use called a noose. And it's a fishing pole with a little slip knot noose on the end. And you can walk up behind them and they'll ignore that. And they're looking at you, ignore that, and stick the noose around their neck and catch them. And it does not harm them if you're careful. You don't want to get carried away and yank on them too hard. But anyway, you catch them, you do what you need to do with them, take measurements or whatever, and then release them or take photographs of them. Nowadays, we got the photographers that are getting out and they find the animals, take pictures of them, and then release them. That's what I do nowadays. But the difference in birds, a lot of times with birds, you have to catch them in their natural state, setting up in the trees and limbs and take pictures of them up there. It's hard to catch them unless you put them in a mesh net, and then you can't set them up because then they'll fly away. But reptiles are different because they're usually secretive and they hide very well. And so getting photographs of them in their natural state is more difficult. Lizards not as bad, turtles not as bad, but snakes are very difficult. And so usually we catch them, pose them, take pictures, and then release them. But anyway, that's some of the techniques we use. Amphibians, we can actually hunt those in this wintertime, and especially in Texas and even along the Atlantic coast areas. They can hunt them in the wintertime by overturning or looking under logs and rocks and things. And, as long as you put your stuff back when you get through looking under it, don't just flip it and leave it laying out on the ground. But they can find them in temperatures down to freezing. So amphibians are a little bit different. They like the moisture. So if you find a place that's got a lot of moisture, wetness, and springs and so forth, you can find those. But anyway, it depends upon what species you're looking for. But herping is just getting out and looking for reptiles and amphibians.
And you hit on some important differences there from when we think, because really the, birding, or if you're going out looking for butterflies and dragonflies, there's a lot of similarities there, and, equipment, things like that. Yes. Herping, we've got some different equipment. We've got, if you're going to catch stuff, needing permits, and certainly going out night herping, that being different. And kind of keeping in mind that the reason those permits are needed is for protecting the resource and for, safety and those kinds of things. So I think that's just kind of important to remember those differences. The other thing, though, that, kind of makes me smile, we talked with butterflies and dragonflies, they're out during the day, so birders get up early, see birds early in the morning. And then we've got birding kind of calms down when it gets hot, but you've got butterflies and dragonflies out. And we're going to add to that. That's when a lot of your snakes and lizards will be out as well. And then, and it definitely depends on the time of year, right? It can get too hot for the snakes and lizards as well. But daytime's a good middle of the day activity for some herps. And then when we wrap around to nighttime is when we get some of, amphibians and some other things. So
you don't ever sleep.
You don't. I'm pretty sure you've got, I know you're.
Get up right before sunrise to go birding. And then it cools off a little bit. Then you can start chasing some reptiles and amphibians. And then it gets hotter. You go chase your butterflies and dragonflies. And then it cools off at the afternoon, late afternoon and night. Then you go herping. And when do you sleep? But that's been some of our cases with my family. Is we're getting out and we'll go out and look at birds early in the morning, and then we'll start looking for other things, the butterflies and the dragonflies, and then the herps are kind of scattered in between, when you see them. And then if you're really serious looking for them, then you go out at night on some of the other animals.
If you're going to focus on, if you're going to sleep, you got to kind of focus on one thing sometimes. And
that's right.
It's funny though, too, so I don't think I've shared this before, but Terry's son was my field herpetology professor while I was a student at Texas A&M. And that was just one of my favorite classes ever. We had so much fun. But, one of the things was we never woke up early because we had been out late the night before. And for me, I love herps and I thought that was so much fun. But that for me kind of helped direct where I was going to go with what I wanted to study in grad school, because I'm not a night person. And I realized that was crazy. And I would much rather wake up at 4 or 5 in the morning to go do birds than stay up late at night, because that's just tricky for me. So it's kind of funny because I definitely started a lot of my journey into my profession with herps. But then I realized, man, these people are crazy. You stay up so late at night. And I would much rather get up early to do birds.
Yeah,
so
I never could. I never could do that. I never could stay up late like Troy does. My son Troy that lives in Braggarville. He used to could stay up to 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. But he said the other day he went out. He said I can't do that anymore. So it's real difficult. Yes, if you live a normal life where you get up at a certain time in the morning and you go to work and then you come in and go to bed, then trying to do a weekend of herping at night is tiring. It really gets tiring if you're not used to it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
I know on my trips here recently, I get up. My wife likes to sleep in. So I get up in the mornings, if we're at a campground somewhere, I'll get up in the mornings and bird until she wakes up. And then we'll eat breakfast, and then we can go on our way to other places and things. But I'll always bird the first couple hours every morning before we leave or eat breakfast.
See, and we always thank our Cup Chat guests for getting up early, but I guess we should really, in this case, thank their spouses as well, because you obviously had to get her up early this morning as well. So
that's the reason she likes hummingbirds best.
Oh,
she don't have to get up early for hummingbirds.
See, and that was doing my dissertation. Phalaropes on Great Salt Lake, they don't get up early. They would start kind of getting up and flying out to go feed around 7:30 in the morning. Very reasonable compared to a lot of other species. So they were very considerate in that way. So, all right. Well, Terry, I have a lot more that I could ask you, and a lot more even that I thought I was going to have time to ask you this morning, but there's so much to say about the subject. So we are going to have you back, but I have to jump in the truck and drive to a meeting. So thank you everyone for joining us this morning for a very quick Cup Chat on herps. One of the things we're going to have to cover in the future is, one of the things that makes our job easy is that everybody loves birds. And I don't think most people would say that everybody loves snakes. So stay tuned, because in the future, we're going to have to do a Cup Chat all about snakes, all about frogs, which are my favorite, all about lizards, turtles. We got some good stuff in there. So Terry, thank you. Everybody have a great day. And if you are a Master Naturalist, Emily and I hope to see you at the Master Naturalist Conference. We're giving a talk Friday morning. I think we're almost full on who can sign up for it. But if we don't catch you there, hopefully we'll catch you just around the conference center and get to say hello. So
And I have done presentations for reptiles and amphibian presentations for Texas for the Master Naturalist program. So when you get one started in New Valley, I'm there ready to go.
Yes, I know. We got to keep moving on that. Yes, Terry gives great presentations on everything, but I always love talking about herps with you. So, all right. Well, everybody have a great and I won't say a herp filled. Everybody have a great and herp and bird filled day. Bye. Thanks, Terry.
Bye, everybody.